Pendulum Inc. Welcome to another incredible class, our fourth class with our professor, Amaria Jackson, here at Criminology in Hip Hop. Throw your L's in the air one time. Long live lyricism for our good brother, Professor Jackson. Before he gets started, Professor Jackson will be going over some great stuff today. And then obviously we have Women's Month coming up in August. We have some great things to announce for Women's Month. And I know that Professor Jackson will be covering some things dealing with women in Women's Month. I may have, and I have to speak to Professor Jackson about this, but I may have an attorney come in, a female attorney come in to give her perspective in terms of some legalities that dealt with some of these cases. But me and him is going to have a conversation about that before I impose on him with these ideas that I have. But I'm sure he will be okay with it, being that it is Women's Month.
Already.
So without further ado, I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna let my guy run the class as he normally does.
Thank you, Dean. Facts, right before you leave, can you make sure that I have sharing capabilities?
Absolutely, taking care of that right now. There you go.
Absolutely. Beautiful people, what's happening? How we doing? What's good? How's your day going? Again, those L's in the air for long live lyricism. As a lifelong lyricist myself, I love being in this space. I absolutely love the idea of next month having a woman attorney to come in and offer some other impact, because I am not going to pretend that I know everything. I just know a good bit about what I know, and I love to share that. So I am happy to be here with you this evening, happy to celebrate with you this evening, and happy to jump into this course, which is ours, which is criminology in hip hop. I keep looking in my background and seeing my head is too big in the back. So let's get going. Let's get ready to get things started. Of course, the first thing I'm going to do as the teacher is I am going to share my screen. So today's class is entitled Hove Did. More specifically, what we're going to look at is the myth of leaving the game. And you can decide upon what the game is. Is the game of the hip hop industry? Is the game the dope game? What is the game? What the myth of leaving the game unscathed? I'm hoping that tonight will be a little bit more interactive for you, a little bit less rambling for me, even though I love my rambles. It's just other ways by which to try to keep this wonderful class of students engaged. So today is Juneteenth, and it is imperative for me to start with something that I looked at in our previous courses, which is the 13th Amendment, which came into existence even after the celebration of Juneteenth. And I'll read those words again because I feel that they really matter. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, any place subject to the jurisdiction. And that except will always be highlighted because it suggests, to me at least, that this idea of freedom in America still exists outside of the bounds of the brown, of the black, and of those other motley hued, melanated people that are our family. Now, again, this is what I'm speaking of, the nation, but I'll always separate the individual and the institution. But I find it very important to begin our class that happens to fall on Juneteenth with just that spotlight on the 13th Amendment. Well, let's go. Let's have a little bit of a game. feel like they worked out last class, just something that kind of get the energy going. So this is Name the Song, because I'd like to believe that you can name the artist. So the lyrics read, had A1 credit, got more crap. From the 1st to the 15th, leave it all down. I'm not a hustler, what you call them. This is the full rap. This is all Name the song. Right? Name the song.
Sounds like it's from Reasonable Doubt, but I don't know which song.
It's not Reasonable Doubt, but that does make sense.
Yep.
It's not Reasonable Doubt, but that makes sense. Somebody else, name the song, please. Talk to me.
Never Change.
And I'm not going to question whether or not you looked it up, euphonic, because I've seen you and you do this. Absolutely. This is Never Change. And I will let you know that there is a theme, and these lyrics are connected to that theme. But yes, Jay-Z, Never Change.
Professor Jackson, some of the students are saying your audio is a little dicey. Just wanted to kind of give you a heads up about that.
Okay. Talk to me now. Can you hear me better?
Still a little underwatery, a little bit.
Mhm. Give me 2 seconds. Maybe the air is doing it. Give me 2 seconds.
No problem.
So I'm going to start right here. If that doesn't work, I'm going to see if my this podcast microphone that I haven't used yet, but that I bought, to see whether or not that might do something for us. Am I still underwater with the sound?
I feel like that's a little better.
Yeah.
Sound a little better, yeah, no doubt, sure.
Better? All right, great. Well, if that's better, then I will continue then. And I'll deal with the mic later on. All right, so that's that first one. Take another look. We got 2 right here. The first says, forgive me for what the stove did. Forgive me for what the stove did.
God did.
I wanted to lead with something that would be easier. Absolutely, God did. And then right below that, Hov did that. So hopefully, we won't have to go through that.
This is well, I know this song too.
H to the Izzo.
H to the Izzo.
Yeah.
All of these things are going to culminate around the idea of today's class. Well, let's go. Got just a couple more for you. I came into this month 100 grand strong, 9 to be exact, from grinding G packs. But this emotion ain't a rewinding me back. Could make 40 off a brick. One line to beat that.
That's MOP and J. I forget the name of the song, but I remember that one.
Love it. And it's J before MOP. When MOP got
yes.
it became something completely different. It was beautiful with J by himself, but when MOP jumped on, it was insane. You don't know. Now, hopefully we're seeing all of these varied tales of the ways by which Jay-Z was able to finesse the street life and what he was able to do economically and artistically in the hip hop culture on the back of that. So here's another one. So why we don't speak? 8 men ain't supposed to make statements. While we don't speak, made man is supposed to make statements. Three, two, one. That is from No Hook, from American Gangster. Jay-Z took on the persona of Frank Lucas and decided to create his own soundtrack for the movie before it came out. Of course, he ain't behaving in years when times were good for the good times. I think this is my last one for us tonight for this particular round of Name the Song. Some of us made it, most of us digressed. And the name of those who ain't late in my progress. Show success, please live through me. See, I'm the honest.
Is it called Shine? I'm just guessing.
It's not shine. That's dope. It's a great time for it. It's not shine. Here's a hint. It's from, I think, what might be the album that people say might be his worst. The comeback album, when people were like, maybe he should have stayed home, even though I might disagree just a little bit.
The Black Album.
This is right after the Black Album. This is from I Know. I Know the Places We Will Go with John Legend singing on that. So I wanted to start there because I don't want to necessarily just hit everybody in the head with facts. Here are my thoughts, here are my thoughts, here are my thoughts. I want to kind of just open this up to everyone else's energy, a little bit of curiosity. And more than anything, I want to just really look at the impact that Jay-Z has given us, but specifically the impact that Jay-Z has given us on this idea of truly being able to leave the game unscathed, because he has plethoric bars that speak about the ways by which he was able to move this and to that and from that to create this foundation, to create this empire. And the question is that really a possibility? Is that something that we should be looking forward to? Is that something that we believe can actually happen? Because DeHaven, that was referenced earlier, who Jay-Z has referenced multiple times, served prison time. And Emery, who Jay has referenced multiple times, did 16 years himself in the midst and in the highlight of Jay-Z's success. So is it possible to leave the game without any marks on you, without any scars, without any smut on the name?
I think you just said no. You just answered that question with a no if you ask me.
So peace to that. That may be the answer, but I'm also not necessarily providing answers for us, but I just want to explore this conversation. So I want to take a second now and listen to Rivera of Undiz, of And Your Man Spat On and made you take the blame. Let's see what On has to say. And for being live TV.
You gotta choose share audio when you share your screen on this one.
I'm not sharing audio. My apologies. Let me escape out of this real quick. And let me get back into my position. I thought I already had that in order for us.
I believe when you choose share screen, it gives you the option to also share the audio, and sometimes we skip past it.
You're right. And thank you for that. I did not click that earlier. I think because audio wasn't immediately on my mind when I got to sharing.
Well, you get stabbed. You get treated at a St. Vincent hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Police come in and question you.
Mm-hmm.
They ask you who stabbed you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell them?
I tell them I have no idea. It was a bunch of people with knives. They said we heard it was Jay-Z. Was he there? I said Eve was there. Buster was there. Chris Lighting was there. Every Q-Tip was there. Every celebrity that I could remember was there.
I mean, do you know in 2023 specifically who stabbed you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Have you ever seen this person, confronted him, talked to him?
You'll see on the series, man.
Okay,
You
fair
can't
enough.
get all the information.
Okay. Jay-Z turns himself in.
Mm-hmm.
He pays a $50,000 bail, gets out.
Mm-hmm.
He's facing 15 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Are you cooperating in the investigation? At that point?
What I'm doing is I'm following the lead of a person. At the time, it was the heads of Def Jam and Steve Stout who wanted to be the hero in this situation.
Okay.
And I was following Steve Stout's direction.
And what was Steve Stout telling you to do?
He walked me through how to get rid. His plan was to get rid of Dame Dash.
He told you that?
That was the plan.
Okay. So he wanted you to be part of this plan.
Because it was, like I told, I was brought to a meeting and we had a conversation. Everybody was trying to get me to, okay, what are we going to do? Like I said, it was a lot of money at stake. I could have done several things. I could have been the executive, the bad guy who turned into an executive, who played victim and screwed up his whole entire life.
And Cameron later on said that Jay-Z stabbed you over Charlie Baltimore. And Charlie Baltimore actually said that when she came to the party, you were already on the ground. And she said that Cameron says a lot of crazy shit out of his mouth.
I can't speak for what information Cameron has. Cameron wasn't there.
And so, one of the greatest hip hop mysteries, one of the coldest lines in that eternal battle between Nas and Jay-Z, and your man stabbed on and made you take the blame. Maybe that part is true. Maybe Jay didn't stab on. I'm not sure. And allow me to be clear, although I'm using Jay-Z as an anchor for this discussion is not me talking about what I do or don't like about Jay-Z. Absolutely incredible MC. As he said, held you down 6 summers and followed with some summers. Still a devotee of Nas, but that's my brethren. I don't know him, but I know him. But this is not about what I feel about Jay, but it is more about the lies, possibly, or the webs that could be woven, and whether or not we are falling into those webs as practitioners of this craft, or as individuals who simply walk the earth and are members of this craft simply because we are who we are. Are we listening? Are we being fed? Are we being given truth? Now, I think what's very interesting is to compare this particular interview with what Jay had to say not that far after this initial incident. So let's move forward to Jay having this conversation with Sway, who we know actually does have the answers. Anybody can say this, Sway does indeed have the answers.
You had an incident with Rivera, you know, where you pled guilty to charges of, I don't remember exactly the charges, assault with a, is it assault with a deadly weapon? Is it?
They would have never let me be out here with you if that was the case.
You stabbed him. Okay. All right. Do you feel like that was a mistake in hindsight?
I believe that was the greatest thing ever. This is gonna sound crazy, but I believe that helped me. You know what I'm saying? Because that put the brakes on everything. That let me know that no matter how successful you are and how much you're on your road, it can all stop. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, you still kid from Marcy Projects, and you know, not everybody they waiting for you to mess up. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just go ahead. You know what I'm saying? We let you just go ahead and self-destruct yourself. You know what I'm saying? But that right there was a moment I was like, okay. You know, and I'm glad it didn't have to take for me to be in jail for like 7 years to be like, damn. Well, you know what I'm saying? That moment was like, okay, all that stops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not going to parties with 30 people, and you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna put myself in that position no more.
When you look at Dame still kind of living that life, you know, you could find Dame at the club, you know.
Yeah, but he's with 30 models. It's a little different. I was with the hood.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. He's hanging at a different kind of club now.
I think there's a couple of things we can take away from that particular interview. So let's go to the back and then move to the front of it. Sway says, you know, essentially, Dame is still living the lifestyle, and Jay's like, but he's around models. He's okay. We don't have that to worry about him. But I find it interesting that I'm suggesting, and mind you, again, I am not an investigator, but I find it interesting that An suggests that even this whole debacle may have been a reason to get Dame Cash out of the picture. I also find it to be very interesting that Jay neither confirms nor denies, but still plays around with the energy, the possibility of having stabbed An. Didn't say he didn't do it. He didn't exactly say he did it. Instead, it may have been the best thing that happened to him, to tell him to slow down. Now that is a lesson for us to take away. That there are times in which life tells us that we should slow down. But I'm not sure if Jay's audience, if Ho's audience is hearing that or heard that component, or whether they did hear all of the other mystical, magical things that he was able to do with the work and transfer that work into the work that made him a billionaire and a billionaire. And so as we explore this idea of criminology in hip hop and its implications to our actions, to our steps, or just to others around us, or just general curiosity, there's something to be looked at when we think about that, because Jay rose as a kingpin from the streets and was able to then roll that kingpin money into supporting and backing himself and giving us reasonable doubt and leading into the billionaire, the mogul, the business man that he is today. And it would appear that for decades, at least 2 decades now, there have been others who have maybe wanted to walk into those very specific shoes with their very prescriptive motion. Let's move forward.
You had a
Now, it has to be topical. Now, Jay spoke of dope in the 90s or the 80s or whenever Jay-Z was alive, because apparently he's this young and this old. But as of recently, we're seeing another example of not being able to leave the game unscathed. And not necessarily somebody who told us about dope, who said they sold dope, or whoever even praised the idea of being a street hustler that made it to this point. And yet finds himself not only charged, but now at this point, found guilty. So let's take a moment also to look at what one would say is one of the lesser members, please don't hate me, of the Fugees, Mr. Pras Michel, and his current situation.
Okay, some news just breaking to us in the last couple of minutes. A former member of the Fugees has been convicted of 10 finance-related federal charges, including money laundering and campaign finance violations. You probably remember the Fugees, 90s, Pras Michel. He was part of it with Lauryn Hill and Wyclef Jean. But Michel has now been found guilty of using illegally obtained money to get closer to former President Obama during his 2012 campaign and using millions more to bankroll an expensive lifestyle. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos joins me now. We have laid out the charges against Pras Michel, now found guilty. And the details here are pretty interesting. Talk us through it and your reaction to what we're learning in the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, this may be colored by the fact that I am a defense attorney and I actually recently defended money laundering charges in federal court. And money laundering charges are very broadly written as a statute and can be, in my opinion, relatively easy for the government to prove. But in addition, you have FARA violations. That involves the an agent of a foreign. Yeah, exactly. It's a law that prohibits, or I should say, requires at least registration if you're working on behalf of a foreign national. It's the kind of thing that became widely learned or known during the Paul Manafort era several years ago. But I would argue before that, there were not a lot of regular citizens that knew about FARA, and there weren't a whole lot of FARA violation prosecutions in this country going back a couple decades. So it's not something that's generally known. That's why I think it's a possibility this defendant probably really didn't know that the mere distinction that he was doing the bidding of a foreign national as opposed to somebody else made such a difference. Just to give you an example, one of the allegations was that one of his co-defendants, a foreign national, gave this defendant $20 million to get a photograph with President Obama. Now, if it didn't involve a foreign national and it didn't involve President Obama, if somebody gave me $20 million to get a photograph with Hallie Jackson, I would take that money. It would be lawful, and I wouldn't tell Hallie Jackson how much I was getting paid. And I would definitely try to get that picture done, and it wouldn't be a violation. The existence of that political angle and the foreign national is what makes some of these things criminal. A lot of citizens don't know it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking.
Cool, that's the hope. We ain't got to talk anymore. So, this Proswell case, and I don't want to dig all the way into it because we have limited amount of time with each other, and I have some more things that I love for us to look at. But I think this Proswell case points out something very integral in this whole idea. Because again, if you believe that you can, and if you are bound by these fantasies of what can happen, how you can move, how you can get your hustle on without understanding, as some would say, the rules to the game, then you might be automatically setting yourself up for prison conviction, or not even that intense, just the idea of, are you being led accordingly? Are you leading yourself accordingly? Are you aware of the movements? It would appear from the court documents and all of the testimony that's going forward is that Pras himself had not started out and did not think that he was in a career of espionage. But yet he finds himself now guilty, as it were, almost as the straw man to face conviction with another co-defendant who cannot be extradited and brought to charges, and other hands that have gone into that pot who aren't culpable of said crime. But I think about that the same way as street politics. How many others have found themselves on the receiving end of a punishment because they're not aware, because their hands weren't all of the way in the mud. But if your hands aren't in the mud, then maybe you don't know the interactions that you're dealing with or that you're a part of. Again, the question remains, and I will accept that yes. My answer is you can't leave the game unscathed. Now, there's ways to leave the music industry a bit unscathed, but I do think the parallel of looking at the streets, looking at criminology, and looking at hip hop, and pairing the two of those together in our analysis gives us a greater idea and a better idea as to how to move in each of those environments. And again, hopefully the environment we're moving in is the environment of hip hop, and we're not worried about that other environment.
Okay, some news just breaking to us in the last couple of.
So, really quickly, talk about leaving the game unscathed. BMF as an organization, as an idea, almost as a concept, ran rampant. The news cycles, and being in Atlanta during some of those times, I wasn't there in all of the clubs because we didn't have the money, but they absolutely had the city on lock. And I mean, the definitive examples of kingpins who should have been able to leave the game unscathed, who went from dimes to nicks to work beyond work. But Creative Loafing in Atlanta reported that Meech, 40, and Terry, 38, were at the pinnacle of close to 150 defendants indicted in federal cases across the country. The brothers and 60 associates were charged in Detroit, where Meech and Terry birthed the organization. The other indictments were handed up in Georgia, Michigan, California, Florida, Missouri, and Tennessee. And there's been some speculation on the net worth, I should say, of Meech and BMF during the heyday. And now, right now, it's saying that Meech is still worth between $100,000 and $270,000. So apparently there's still some money there. But that's not the point that I'm looking at. I'm looking at the fact that Terry got out not that long ago. Meech is still dealing with incarceration issues. And again, I neither stand for or against anything in this particular case. I'm speaking more of that idea of what does it mean to be a kingpin? Is it possible to be a kingpin in this society, which unto itself has so many underworld undercurrents itself, but is this a viable option? Has it been shown to be a viable option? And the movement of hip hop, is there something about the visibility that BMF gained with their somewhat of a record label that facilitated some of this to come quicker than it may have come? Now, we can't talk streets, drugs, subversive action in America, or really looking at how those subversive actions in America play out if we don't look at one of the architects, I'd almost say, of that movement, which is Freeway, whose arrest and subsequent cases helped to really shine a light and uncover the connection of the United States government and the CIA to the drug trafficking and to the complete obliteration of so many cities and areas through the introduction of crack cocaine. So let's just have a quick listen. Freeway.
You know how they say that everybody has a purpose in life? Well, at one time I felt that selling cocaine was my purpose.
We was starving, just looking for a way to succeed. The first time I seen rock cocaine was 1980.
Murder rate was sky high. South of the 10 freeway was kind of a no man's land.
So, we're selling it to the blacks. He said, you go into these neighborhoods, there's no cops, you can sell it where you want, and when they start killing each other, nobody cares.
I was going through like $1 million worth of drugs just about every day.
That's like gold. We can make a fortune. He was maybe the biggest guy in LA.
Rick, Freeway Rick. Freeway Rick was getting his dope from a very big operator. I think we're into something that's bigger than us, something we really can't deal with.
They had been trafficking on behalf of the United States government.
She could prove what she was saying.
The story was mind-boggling.
When I was young, let me tell you how it was where I come from.
As I've said before, no drug network will remain alive.
There's a lot of people who think that, I made that whole thing up. What they don't realize is the CIA admitted it.
See, I didn't know until I was sitting in prison how valuable an education was.
Yeah, drugs suck. Drugs are really bad. But the drug war is worse.
You want to know a version of health? Be the only guy playing straight in a dirty card game. And that's what the drug war is.
There are more people in prisons and jails today just for drug offenses than were incarcerated for all reasons in 1980.
Me being here is defying all odds. People don't get federal life sentences and beat them.
We've been spending billions and billions and billions of dollars every year on this war on drugs to find out that the government was involved. That's pretty astonishing.
Crack in the system.
This is Los Angeles. So we have Freeway Rick Ross, who again, many would claim through his actions and through his network set the foundation for crack being infiltrated into the inner cities, of course, with the unwitting assistance of the CIA. The template by which many others, including Jay-Z, at least as per his songs, would have copied for their movements. And did he end up on top? Was he able to leave this game unscathed, even with saying that he was going through $1 million worth of drugs a day? Was he able to move?
You know how they say.
And he wasn't, because we have the war on drugs that began with Nixon in '71, but then also even into the 90s, we have this war ramping up. And as our slide says, harsh sentencing continued into the 1990s. President Bill Clinton was elected after running on a tough on-crime platform. And in 1994, his administration passed the crime bill, a $30 billion piece of legislation that funded 125,000 new state prison cells, mandated life sentences via 3-strike laws, and added 60 new crimes worthy of the death penalty. Between 1980 and 1997, the number of people locked up for nonviolent drug-related crimes rose from 50,000 to 400,000. And from that point, I pause, because this is less about what choices one should or should not make. This is less about morality. This is less about respectability politics, as it is about doing the math from 50,000 to 400,000 on the heels of something unto itself was ushered in by the government unto itself. There are times in which we are playing a dirty, dirty game, and it's very much worthy of us to be aware of that so that we can move accordingly. And again, I'm not limiting this to street life, but just an idea of what is the game that's being played? What are the rules? What are the parameters? And are you playing within those parameters? And if you move outside of those parameters, are you aware enough of those parameters to make responsible, I guess to be the word, or at least intelligent movements within those parameters. So, spoiled victory. Again, Freeway Rick Ross, all of the drugs trafficked, CIA connectivity, so many news articles, so much of an investigation, able to walk straight free. And even he has not been able to lay a copyright claim to his name because of the federal statute that doesn't allow him to profit from illegal activities. And so speaking of, well, Rick Ross, he says, I think he avoids me. He avoids me, said Freeway. A couple of times I went to places that he was supposed to be and he disappeared. He was nowhere to be found. I reached out to him too. I tried to make amends. I told him that if we worked together, he probably could help more people. But then he went on the Breakfast Club and dissed me. I really was just more disappointed with the Breakfast Club because they did invite me on to refute what he said about me. The people also talked about the show Snowfall, which is loosely based on Ross's rise to the top of the drug game in South Central LA in the late 80s. He said that the show stole the story and that he and John Singleton were working on a movie before his death. They stole my life story. It's my life story, he said. They stole my life story. Yeah, it's a fact. John Singleton and I was supposed to be working on a movie, and the movie is still going to come out. We're going to start casting for the movie right now. Later in the interview, he explained further, it's so much to it. It's my story, and they're benefiting off of it, he said. I'm not. And so I find myself even at a crossroads when I think about all of this, because a man who had finally received his freedom cannot be able to fully claim likeness of his image, of his story, of his struggle because of the illegal practices that it's affixed to, yet legally many others are able to make millions upon millions of dollars for his story. So right before we get ready to step out of the lecture portion and open up some space for some Q&A, I just want to look at how it looks in hip hop. Looking at De La Soul's, and the reason why I said De La Soul's, I was about to say something with possessive, but De La Soul, and the reason why De La Soul didn't find themselves on streaming services is because Tommy Boy didn't think that the records would do well. And as such, no reason to work on sample clearances. Now, when the records did well, the group became international and incredible, that was a whole nother issue to be dealt with. Same way, for homage. We all know Simon Says. During the raucous eras, Simon Says would come on. B-boys, MCs, DJs alike. When that boom, 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 come on, everybody loses their mind. And Pharoah Monch was set to be right up there with Mos and Kweli and so many of the other Raucous Records alumni. But we didn't have that because once again, that sample wasn't cleared. And Internal Affairs' album, the distribution was halted. The record label not really paying much attention after the money is not coming in. And finally, even Martin himself. Last thing for us to look at today, the fact that sample clearances is almost even treated like a criminal theft event.
The
The art of sampling completely changed hip-hop culture. Almost overnight, producers had hundreds of years of recordings to reinterpret, chop, flip, and turn into certifiable bangers. In the early days, artists and producers took whatever they wanted. The idea of clearing a sample simply didn't exist yet. Then, Biz Markie released Alone Again off his album I Need a Haircut, and the game was changed forever. But why? Stylistically, Alone Again fit the same template as his breakout hit Just a Friend, with a prominent piano loop and Biz singing the chorus. Only this time, he turned from sampling Freddie Scott to a Gilbert O'Sullivan 1972 hit. O'Sullivan sued Biz Markie for damages. In 1991, sampling grievances were usually settled out of court. For example, De La Soul was forced to settle with the Turtles for usage of You Showed Me on Transmitting Live from Mars to the tune of $1.7 million. However, the Alone Again case was the first to actually hit a courtroom. According to expert testimony during the trial, as many as 50% of all rap albums at the time were released without finalized sample clearances. Judge Ken Duffy didn't mix his words when he ruled, "Thou shalt not steal." He found Biz Markie guilty of infringing on O'Sullivan's copyright, ordered the rapper to pay $250,000 in damages, barred Markie from continuing to sell either the single or the album, and perhaps the boldest judgment, he referred the matter to criminal court on the grounds that Markie was liable for theft. For Biz Markie, his response came 2 years later when he released his album, All Samples Clear. If the album title wasn't clear enough, the cover art found Biz playing the part of both the judge and the defendant. His ability to turn adversity into amazing creative is another.
And I want to pause the last few seconds of the video there. Because if I were to offer an overarching message for this particular class today, goes in the words of Tupac Amaru Shakur, whose birthday heavenly was just celebrated just a couple of days ago. Said you may be deep in the game, you got the rules missing. And so the idea of leaving any game unscathed, the streets, the industry, business, music, politics, think lives, and recognizing, understanding the rules, and moving accordingly. We're going to open up the floor for Q&A. We have time for that. Monica, you went up first. I expected you, so let's go, please.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was really informative. From the standpoint of, like, it seems as like the more people are involved, the bigger you get, the more money involved. Obviously, the scathing is worse, you know? And that always happens with money. And it seems like, as a way to maybe leave the game unscathed, like if you did everything yourself, right? You're way less likely to be involved in any turmoil, but also like you're probably not going to make it as far in the game. You know, if you did every instrument yourself, everything, no sampling, you know, you didn't sell any drugs to get studio time, like you worked a 9 to 5 and everything. So it seems like there could be a way, but it's like a risk versus reward for most people. And, you know, do you agree with that?
So I still abide by the African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. I think there's a definitive value in having a team, in having a squad, and having a crew. I'm going to kind of lean into that last line right before I open up for the questions, that deep in the game, we got the rules missing. So I'm hoping that some of the things that we talk about can be applicable to other avenues, other ventures, other ideas. And it's the missing of the rules. With the Proswell case, for example, there are certain components of that where they removed, he wouldn't have had a huge concern to deal with. The fact that he was dealing with someone that was connected outside of the United States of America created a whole different reality for him to deal with. But if there were someone else, if there were a Joe Schmo who happened to have a whole bunch of money, then maybe that wouldn't have been exactly the case. And of course, a lot of this is speculation. But I think that it's understanding the rules of the game that you're playing. And quite often, maybe we think that it's a fair game, or we're just not in tuned enough to be aware of the rules of the game so that we move accordingly. So I don't necessarily think that doing it on your own is going to be of the best benefit, because you'll have gray hairs before you're supposed to have it, and scoliosis, and not enjoy the fruits of your labor. There's a beautiful thing about having a squad and a crew with you. I mean, this is Pendulum Inc., right? This is a squad of like-minded individuals who make wonderful things happen. But I think that what's most important is being aware of those rules, being aware of the room that you enter into, the reality that you enter into, the people with whom you are navigating, and move accordingly.
Thank you. And maybe assume that it's best to assume you don't know all the pieces in play, no matter how much you think you do. Know that there's something else going on that you may not foresee.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. There's definitely going to always be a moment where you find out that I thought I knew this, but I didn't. And here are 17 other things that I didn't know. Being open to that. Absolutely. Chris, I see your hand.
Hey, Professor.
Hold on, Chris. Is that, I believe that's your connection? I think you're frozen right now. Y'all hear me?
Yeah, I think he froze.
Chris, we'll give you a second to catch up in just a moment.
Yeah, he froze.
All right. Do I see any other hands?
Big Mike.
Yo. Professor Jackson, appreciate you always. These classes is always a treasure chest of jewelry being dropped every time.
I received that. Those are bars, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, I try. Well, I don't try. I just try to speak and bars just come out. But it was more of it was kind of crazy that we talking about criminology and hip hop, and starting with like Jay-Z quotes, like my rap life started like reading volume Life in Times Volume 2, the Jay-Z album that not a lot of people talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Like having the booklet and like reading Dope Man and performing Dope Man in my little living room was like that was like the only time I was reading other people's raps, because the year after that I started writing my own and I ain't stopped since. But but just shout out you and just the light that you put on all these situations and just the different ways of thinking that you have people thinking, because this is people like Jay-Z and rappers of that era influenced a whole generation of people I grew up with. So even dealing with certain things kind of touches home or whatever. And then the fact that knowing the rules to the game and then knowing that the game evolves and then seeing how the game changes is dope to see it in a class. So shout out to you.
Respect. I appreciate that. I think for me, and I think I said this probably at the beginning of the class, not this class, but the beginning of the course, I should say, is that hip hop means so much to me that I feel that it deserves the microscope, the investigation, the appreciation that we give to all of these other defined artistic crafts. You know, there are people who either paint with Picasso's inspiration or write about Picasso and have whole careers on Picasso or Da Vinci. My lady just purchased the Basquiat book for me for my born day. Beautiful thing. Love it. And Basquiat had a career span of, say, 10 years, right? And connected to hip hop. I think that it's imperative that if we're going to live this culture and give this culture the appreciation that it deserves, that it needs to be unearthed, it needs to be dissected, it needs to be explored. And all of the levels need to be explored, but more specifically, not so much in the let me find a right or wrong or a yes or no. Let me just open up an avenue of questions of the implications, because again, whether or not Picasso is the greatest, whether Da Vinci is the greatest, and so on and so forth, all of those conversations dig into that discipline of art, and it gives credence to the work that it requires to create them. And if hip hop is only explored as a currency, is only looked at as a commodification, then the art of it is being removed. The art needs to remain, and as such, the discussion needs to remain, and we need to look at all the applications within that discussion.
Yeah, but
did Chris come back on? Or you get back online?
Chris is still in deep thought.
Yeah.
Chris just signed on from another thing, so he should be.
Stay word. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? And I love hearing your thoughts. I love hearing your questions. I'm continuing to build this particular class around the energy and the impact I get from y'all. And us being here in this virtual space kind of makes it a little bit difficult because I don't see all of your eyes. So I really appreciate this Q&A component of the class so that I can know where to go, not to go, where to go even stronger with. So please feel free. Any other questions?
Okay, I think Chris is trying to sign on, but I don't know what's going on. Let's give him a couple more seconds. Chris, you there?
He just messaged me, said he's trying to get back on. So he said to let you guys know that he is trying right now.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
I don't know where it cut off, but just maybe to jump straight to the my question. I have a lot of ideas floating around right now. A part of me wants to ask, like, seems like Dean Fax is figuring out very interesting ways of navigating around the game to create a very interesting type of impact from a different angle, like with building a fucking university. Excuse my language, but then also part of me wants to ask I guess it depends on how you're or I don't know if this is even matters, but how you're defining the game, or like if it just means we have to be extremely creative and not only knowledgeable and being very aware of who are all the players in the game, but also how to be very patient and have very grandiose kind of ideas of how we're going to trick the system in a way, because I don't know if you're ultimately optimistic about everything, but I get really like, I'm not, after this talk, like, I mean, I'm both optimistic, but also very much so the exact opposite. I'm like, God damn, like this is crazy how things are operating. This is just way too, whoever these players are is just not possible to navigate around that. A part of me is thinking like, hey, I could make friends with some millionaires or billionaires who have a good heart and actually want to change shit, and then kind of establish a whole new world order or something. I don't know. I'm gonna leave it at that for now to hear some of your thoughts, but yeah.
So one of my favorite words, I'm a word nerd, is anomaly. An anomaly is the exception to the rule. And I would like to consider myself an anomaly, and I would like to encourage others to be an anomaly themselves. And to put that in proper perspective, there are lawyers. There are levels of lawyers. There is a hierarchy of attorneys. And there are some attorneys who make great money, handle big cases, who are very well regarded and highly regarded and move in their community. And then there are some lawyers who graduated at the bottom of their class, and they are attorneys, and they make money as attorneys, and there's a space for them. So there's always a space for all of us, but the question is whether or not the rule is going to apply to you, or if you're going to be the exception to the rule. But I think we can't be the exception to the rule if we're not aware of the rule unto itself. So I forever live in optimism. I move in hope. I live in compassion each and every day. There are myriad reasons for me to get up and give thanks and claim my blessings on a daily basis, even with what I see in the landscape. But what moves me further and further is that idea of being the anomaly. The rule exists. And since I know the rule exists, if I'm aware of it, then I can be the exception to that rule. You got another one, Chris? You got to follow up? Did the hand go back up?
Yeah, thank you for that. That totally makes sense. A part of me is wondering, do you think there's a way to, I don't know, that I feel like there's a lane that could be explored of basically taking an investigative journalism type of approach to rap to convict wrong people and the wrong people in the game. I don't know how far you could possibly go with that type of angle before you get completely fucked and then you have to go escape the country, or like a Julian Assange kind of like but like rap type of thing. I don't know, because yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Do you think that's something to explore? Or...
You know, the thing is, Huey Newton is not alive. Malcolm X is not alive. And Abu Jamal is incarcerated. And Matutu just came home. And Asada is in Cuba. Why do I say all of that? It's very beautiful to stand strong and be a martyr if that is what you want to be, if you want to be a martyr. But I feel like there have been enough martyrs in the world that I'm not really living up to their legacy by me being a martyr. I think the subversive activity is what matters more. One of my favorite books is The Spook Who Sat by the Door. And just even that ideology of being close enough to hear and to know without absolutely being completely involved. I don't think we necessarily benefit by standing up all of the time, shouting loudly, hey, I am going to bring you down. You know, even actually to reference Freeway Rick Ross, he's been quoted as saying that at his heyday, he always looked bummed. He was never fresh. He was never fly. When he dipped off into his home, there's something else, but he was always regular because he said that essentially, if you can't tell the difference between the soldier and the general, then you don't know who to go after. I think there is a value of not necessarily having to stand up so strongly and putting a target, of necessarily saying that I am going to bring this down, because that lets them know that you're bringing it down. There's so many subversive ways that the system has been cracked. And I'll leave with this last analogy before I move back to you, Fonnie. When we remember that water is stronger than any other force in the world. We have mountains because we have water. Water will seep through cracks in foundation. Strong, simple, continual motion that is almost unable to be perceived. And one day, the foundation is cracked. And nothing dynamic happened. There was no explosion. It was the consistency and the persistence of water. Thanks, Monica. I see you again.
Yeah, thank you. This is kind of an overarching question. I'll try to do it quick. With like the foundation of hip hop, started out, you know, the b-boy, the DJ, and the rapper. At some point, it became like to push basically criminals to the top of the charts, because in hip hop, more than any other musical genre, it seems to be more about the person than the music, or not more about, but it's such a big part. People want to know what they're doing and like maybe because hip hop is such in first person, the way it's written and like so narrative driven like that. There's been people like Tyler the Creator and stuff that were just like straight artists. Do you foresee a end to like the systemic racism of pushing people, you know, to the top of the charts where it's just more about the music in the future?
I would absolutely love to say that. But I would also caution us to remember that we're talking about the music business. Now, here's something really intense for us to think about. Well, I listen to podcasts. They help my mind go great, right? So one of my favorites is the Happiness Lab, and the other is No Stupid Questions. Can't remember which one actually made this particular point, but it was studying the social media intake of America, and that negative stories, negative posts really run rampant here. But that also our news coverage is, quite frankly, more negative than many other nations. And so the negative is what sells. And if the negative continues to sell, then there's going to be a space for that. But I think, you know, when you reference Tyler, we can reference a few other people who have risen to fame or who are somewhere bubbling underneath. There is always a pocket. And I caution us, in words of a big boy from Outkast, if you want to reach the nation, start from your corner. So the idea of, if we're going to upend the industry, if we're going to change the world, if we're going to change the country, that is absolutely beautiful as an idea, but it doesn't happen that way. It happens in a localized and an intentional effort. I've been in Atlanta since 1996, so I was here as it started bubbling, started burgeoning. But I was here when Dre got on the stage and said the South got something to say. And that was a statement that had to be made because Atlanta wasn't being taken seriously. Andre 3000, one of the coldest MCs, wasn't being taken serious. So it didn't happen that day. It was it didn't happen that day, but Atlanta itself grouped and moved, and songs came out, and money came out, and artists came out. And so I think more so than thinking about fighting just the power structure and completely rechanging everything that they're doing, they're going to move with money. And so as the art that we create, that we love, as it grows in this city and that city and that city and that city, and as we're aware of those rules, so we're protecting our intellectual rights, we're protecting our money and our interest in this investment, which is our craft, then there's going to be a space. But here's the thing, if you don't sell out Taylor Swift type shows, you can still be Currency. And Currency is doing wonderful things in the industry. So whether or not the industry will change is determined by whether or not the country will change. And all of that's beautiful and wonderful. But even any of those changes are going to be happening in those incremental and fundamental levels. So this is part of that change. You are part of that change. And so the other analogy is a grandfather planting, the tree for his grandson in the yard, knowing that he might not ever, and absolutely knowing that he won't see that tree grow and, come to its full fruition, but that his grandson will. And that his grandson will be able to take his grandson to that tree. And for me, there's a lot of value there. So will the system change? Will the nation change? We'll see. But I know that in these small segments, we have the ability to create that change.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. I think we are complete for today's class, the Criminology in Hip Hop. As you guys know, we have the month of July off at Pendulum Inc. I want you guys to enjoy your summer, unless you signed up for summer school. Professor Maria Jackson will be back August, I believe the third week of August. And the date on that is August 21st. August 21st, Professor Maria Jackson will be back. we will be in the heat and the thick of Women's Month. Should be really fun. Professor Jackson doesn't know this, but we have Rod Digger coming in to teach that month.
Yo.
We have Shauna coming in to teach. We have Bahamadia coming in to teach. We might even have Rhapsody pull up, because I saw her 2 days ago. So yeah, Women's Month is going to be amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I'm gonna need these 2 months to prepare for that. Thank you.
Good, man. We're excited. We're excited. As you guys know, man, Professor Mario Jackson does a phenomenal job here. One of the best classes, and one of the classes that I was very, very excited to have him at. So if you can, throw your L's up for Professor Jackson. Long live lyricism. This has been Criminology in Hip Hop. Keep it locked here. Pendulum Inc. Yeah, yeah, yeah.